Now, as I said, Scott Ritter was stopped from boarding the plane in New York to attend and give a talk amongst very distinguished international company at the St Petersburg International Forum. I was myself invited to it, but plainly am otherwise engaged. But one of the distinguished participants was Jackson Hinkle, our man in St Petersburg, or Leningrad as it will always be to me, Jackson. Welcome to the show. First of all, explain to the viewers, if you will, what this forum was all about and what level of people were participating in it.
Thank you for having me on, George. And I first have to say big congratulations to the Workers' Party, everything you guys are doing. I wish you all the best of luck in the upcoming general elections. And yes, the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum is, it's a very special event. There was 12,000 people from over 100 countries present in St. Petersburg over the last several days in a lot of ways, what is portrayed as a business and an economic forum, but the end goal is this is a coming together of the free and sovereign people of the world to pursue the agenda of multipolarity, to free 99% of the world from the 1% in the West that is stepping on their necks. So it was an incredible forum. I participated in, several panels, of course, panels which were supposed to include Scott Ritter and Judge Napolitano from the United States. Unfortunately, the U.S. State Department had other ideas, and they prevented Scott Ritter from joining us. His voice was seriously missed, although on one of the panels he was able to tune in via video link and gave some very insightful commentary. But I was really upset because he missed my favorite panel, which was the panel we did with Professor Dugan and with Maria Zaharova, Pepe Escobar, and several other individuals.
It sounds like Russia ain't that isolated after all then.
No, not at all. In fact, at the forum, it was so busy and so crowded. You had to essentially storm through the crowds as if you were a running back in the National Football League to make it through all of the dense crowds of people. So Russia's not isolated. In fact, at the plenary session, there was a beautiful coming together of Bolivian President Luis Arce and the president from Zimbabwe. They had a conversation with President Putin about, de-dollarization, BRICS, and anti-imperialism. It's about as not isolated, I think, as you could get as a country.
I was terribly upset in the midweek, and my clip on it has gone viral in Russia, at the obscenity of Zelensky and the Germans being at the commemoration of D-Day, while the country which took 8 out of 10 Nazi casualties, killed 8 out of 10 Nazis killed in the Second World War, did more than anybody else, did more than everybody else put together. Russia was not invited to the 80th anniversary. Were people in Russia also upset by that, or have they become inured to it now?
I think in a lot of ways they've gotten used to it. You heard Putin refer to the West as a bunch of hyenas in his plenary session speech, and it's 100% true. I mean, if you looked at the events in France and Normandy this past week, one would think that the Nazis won World War II, which, if anyone has taken the time to look at how the United States treated the Nuremberg trials, in a lot of ways that's actually kind of true. But, you have Ukrainian far-right nationalists, Nazis that are there. You have the French that are there that are supporting the Ukrainian nationalists. And you have the United States, which is participating in this as well. The Germans there at the celebration. And then the Russian people are not allowed to attend. I mean, again, if you look at this from a 30,000-foot view, not knowing the history of the past, several decades, you would have thought that just looking at that celebration alone, that the Nazis won World War II.
It's incredible. Let's talk about Germany, Jackson. The results are in. Little soldier Schulz has lost. He's called a socialist prime minister on the BBC website. I have no idea what could possibly be socialist about him. But if that is socialism, then I don't want anything to do with it, to be honest. And the far right, as they're described, AfD, have won the election. Now, one of their platforms was ending the posture of belligerence towards Russia, which has cost Germany everything. Cost them a very long, cold winter. I can tell you, I was frequently there. And the situation is backside for elbow. It is upside down. It is the right that are demanding peace with Russia and the left that are demanding war with Russia. What's your take on what happened today in Germany?
Well, I'm constantly reminded of the history of the Trotskyists that allied with the Nazis in more ways than one against Stalin. And I think when people call themselves socialists today in the West, a lot of them are just Trotskyists cosplaying as communists, because communists are the heroes of history. And what we're seeing today is just it's another iteration of that. Olaf Scholz is in no way, shape, or form a socialist. If he was a socialist, he wouldn't be supporting the far-right Nazis in Ukraine. And he surely wouldn't have abandoned the people of Germany over the past several years by making them essentially starve and go without energy, low-cost energy, because they wanted to sanction Russia for virtue signaling politics. I mean, it is a horrific state of affairs, and I'm not surprised that, the German public voted against him. I guess we'll have to wait and see what the new elections or the new government will present us with. But ultimately, I don't think there are many legitimate voices within the European Union that are actually going to be committed to building a multipolar world. Sure, maybe they're going to be a little bit less hawkish when it comes to Russia, but even the voices that are less hawkish when it comes to Russia are either extremely pro-Israel or they are anti-China. And that is nothing that should be celebrated. We should be very clear about the reality of this situation.
Well, I said in my monologue that one after the other of these so-called far-right, so-called nationalist groups, despite all their anti-globalist rhetoric, take the knee to the empire. Meloni was one. Le Pen looks like she's shaping to be the other. Is there any confidence in Russia that German policy will now change?
If I had to be 100% honest, as a non-Russian who's in Russia, I think that most Russians really don't care all that much about Germany right now, or any of the West for that matter. I think that Russia is focused on the sovereignty and the prosperity of Russia for Russians. I think they have a beautiful relationship that is developing with China, with Iran, with other BRICS members, some that are soon to join in October at the next BRICS summit. And ultimately, Russia is nowhere near as obsessed or concerned with Western states and, who the next government is as Western states are concerned and obsessed with Russia. And Vladimir Putin has, said this for many years. There's the brilliant series of documentaries that Oliver Stone did on Vladimir Putin. And one thing that struck me in the interviews that Oliver Stone did, Putin responded by saying, it doesn't really matter who the new government is, who the new face is in the United States. Doesn't matter if they're a Republican, a Democrat, if they say they're going to be friendly or antagonistic to Russia. At the end of the day, we always get the same sort of leadership from the West.
It is, of course, inescapable that I ask you about the extraordinary mishaps of your country's president on the stage in front of all the world leaders, in front of the veterans, in front of the watching public throughout the world. And I ask it in this context. The British Prime Minister appears to be about to quit in the middle of a British general election and likely replaced as an interim with Lord Cameron, the former Prime Minister David Cameron. That's never happened before. But so many things nowadays have never happened before, but they're happening now. I'm wondering if the state of Joe Biden is such that even at this ridiculously late hour, the Democrats are going to have to shuffle him off the stage.
It's a good question. I don't know the answer, but it's a very good question. And your point about Sunak brings an interesting potential comparison. There's no way of really knowing, because ultimately the situation is so horrific right now with Biden relieving himself in front of the French president that you'd think if this was going to happen, they would have done it months ago. But we still haven't seen that. As Biden was relieving himself in a suit in front of the French president, I was walking to listen to President Putin give a 4-hour lecture on the intricacies of Russian and multipolar economics. So the situation is very grim in the United States. I don't know what's going to happen. I can only hope that we don't have someone as mentally unwell as him leading our country for any longer than we have to have it.
Well, it could be laughing gas Kamala Harris. I mean, she probably won't relieve herself on stage in front of the watching world, but once she opens her mouth, she might as well, because what comes out of her mouth is not that different from Joe Biden's backside. Jackson Hinkle, as always, a pleasure to deal with you. Thanks so much indeed. Enjoy St. Petersburg for as long as you are there. Jackson Hinkle, political analyst and host of The Dive. Thank you for joining us.